What's up? This is Rebel Radio.
What up? What up? This is DJ Newmark.
This is Peanut Butter Wolf.
It's your boy. It's okay.
Keep checking out Rebel Radio.
Rebel Radio.
This is Rebel Radio.
We're in the place right here. Rebel Radio is going down.
Would you say Rebel Radio?
Oh, wait. Let's do it again.
Rebel Radio.
What's up, Rebels? Welcome back to Rebel Radio, the weekly show where I talk to the rebels that are shaping youth culture. We find out how they do it, why they do it, and what you can do to get a little piece of the pie for yourself. We're also the only show to bring you new music every week from our friends over at EDM.com. And check it out, we're back in the studio this week with my man Sak Pase. You might have seen that we were on the road. The last 3 episodes were brought to you live from the Collision Conference out in New Orleans. If you haven't, go back and check those out. But we're back in our home studio now. Sak Pase is an amazing record producer. He's got 6 Grammy nominations. He's worked with Kanye and Jay-Z on the Watch the Throne album. Produced for Rhianna, T.I., Busta Rhymes. The list goes on and on. My man is super talented and has some great stories to tell. He's got an amazing one about meeting a label owner in a chat room and how that really kickstarted his career, and gave us a little insight into what it's like behind the scenes at the Def Jam writing camp, songwriting camps. What else? He gets into the importance of face-to-face collaboration. You know, more and more is happening virtually, and he gives us a really interesting perspective on the flip side of that and why it's important to get in the room with people. Lots of great stories coming up from Sak Pase right after the EDM.com track of the week.
I wanna know what you know, where you been all alone. I hit your phone, you're not alone, yeah.
Yo, that was Kev Mo with Running Up, the EDM.com track of the week. If you like that one, get over to EDM.com, check out more new music. And now let's get into it with Sak Pase.
You got me running on, you got me running, baby, you know.
Thanks for doing this, man.
Absolutely.
I'm excited. We just met, recently, and learning all about you and all the stuff you're involved in, which seems like a lot.
Yeah.
So I'm excited to dig into it. Let's talk about how you got started, though.
Sure. Well, I got started.
Actually, let me ask you this. Do you remember the first record you ever bought?
The first record I ever bought was Junior Mafia CD, and it was a single.
Players Anthem.
Yes.
Yeah.
It was an A and B side, and I had to sneak it into the house because my parents weren't really into rap too much.
Right. What were they into?
I mean, church stuff, or like Stevie Wonder. I'm Haitian, so a lot of Zouk and compa kind of influenced songs, or Julio Iglesias, just not rap. Right. It was like super anti-rap.
Right.
Especially like since Uncle Luke is in the area, so they associated all rap music with Uncle Luke. Of
course.
Right? And so, yeah, that was the first. I remember telling my parents that I was listening to like Stevie Wonder records when I was actually listening to Junior Mafia. You know what I mean? That was the first.
So you're like a secret rap fan.
Yeah. I had to keep it on the low.
But you were playing music in church, right?
Yeah, I grew up, playing in like the church band, played like the keyboard and a little bit of the bass.
Okay.
And so it was almost like I didn't realize I was actually developing these kind of the environment of making music was starting to happen before I understood what the recording business was, the record industry was.
Sure.
And then the Fugees came out, and since they were Haitian, it was like,
sure,
you can listen to this. But I just started.
Oh, your parents were cool with it.
Yeah, they were cool with only because they were Haitian.
Yeah.
And then that ended up listening to a whole bunch of Mobb Deep, Boot Camp Click, and then just my musical interest started to grow, and started listening to everything from like Rough Riders to Maya to whatever was out at the time. So that's when the appetite for music started to really flourish and grow.
And then outside of church, when did you start making music? Like, what was your introduction to that?
I was to keep me out of trouble. My parents signed me up for keyboard classes.
Nice.
And then one of the requirements was that you had to buy a keyboard and this drum machine, right? And so,
which one?
It was like a Yamaha DR or DX something.
Okay.
You had to sequence everything on a floppy disk. And so you have these piano classes, but then I ended up just trying to make beats. And I didn't even know what I was doing for real. I was just like, oh, I can play chords and then record them and do drums and record them. But I was the only one who was hearing the music, so.
Right.
And that was the start of me actually now producing songs.
Sure.
Because I was playing in a band,
right, but
I wasn't really producing records or music or beats. And then now I have this drum machine, and now I'm actually making records now.
So and then how'd that go to like making a beat for somebody?
So when I was in middle school, two friends of mine, they were rapping locally, and I just played there. I told them like, hey, this is kind of cool. I'm gonna play this on the morning like news, like school news.
Oh yeah.
And then I played it on the fade out of the morning school news, and then all of a sudden, by lunchtime, they were like the most poppin'est group.
That's crazy.
Right? So that was the first like record breaking moment. But then I started to realize that I had a huge interest in actually making the music. So at the time, no one really liked my beats because they weren't really that good.
Right.
Right. So.
But you're saying no one, like you talking about at school?
Yeah.
Like in the neighborhood or whatever.
It was. I was making like beats that kind of they just weren't developed. I just didn't understand how to make music for real. I was just piling on things. Then I went to Michigan State, and my roommate at the time was like, yo, let's write a song. And we wrote the song, and that was it. And then he was like, yo, let's go to a recording studio. And then we went to a recording studio in Detroit, and we actually recorded the song. And that same weekend, I told my mom I was dropping out of college.
Just from recording that song?
That one, it was like, it was crazy because it was my first time ever in a recording studio. And I remember coming in, and after about 20 or 30 minutes, the engineer was like, yo, have you been in a recording studio before? And I was like, no. He was like, man, you seem like you seem really natural. Like this seems very comfortable for you. Yeah. And that was all I needed to know. Yeah. Like I was in front of the console, kind of giving directions as to how the song should be performed. And
what was it, do you think, that clicked?
Man, I honestly don't know. It was just this feeling of not having to explain the ideas that I always had. I guess I've always been interpreting things in a certain way, and then essentially producing ideas in my head, whether it be like, marketing plans or like if I seen a cereal box, I would just be like, man, if I did it, I would have done it like this. And I think once I got into a recording studio, understanding it was like this meeting place of I was part of making a song, and then I had an idea of how it should be executed, and now I was in the environment where I can actually facilitate all of those things that I naturally had these urges to do anyway. Yeah. So I don't know, I always say like, I really believe that's when music kind of tapped me on the shoulder and was like, hey, you should do this. Because I stopped growing and I couldn't play basketball anymore. And the tracks on the baseball field, like I wasn't, it was too hot. So it was like, this was it.
That's right. Yeah. It's so interesting because I think as a producer, there's not just the musical talent, but there's the the technical side of it,
Mm-hmm.
right? And you know what you're talking about is like it's so much about technique to bring these ideas to life.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm always fascinated by that.
Yeah, it's just a whole nother. It's a whole nother language that you just end up developing the techniques and the most effective ways to just get your ideas from your head to your ears.
Sure.
And for me, whenever I create something, it's almost like I'm working backwards, because I hear the finished product and I see the finished product in my head.
And then it's like, how do you get there?
How do I get there?
Wow.
And then you either, now I'm starting to understand the most efficient way is just to, outsource the different talents or skill sets of other people to sometimes help you achieve that. You know, instead of me spending 2 hours on trying to get a guitar progression down, call up someone who knows how to play the guitar, and now it's just a matter of me just getting the phrasing together.
Sure.
And that's what I'm starting to get a lot better at.
You're talking about the recording studio, and I remember when we spoke on the phone, we talked about it too. What is it like? Obviously, with technology now, you can make a song anywhere.
Right.
Right? People record in their bedrooms. You could probably go to Starbucks and make a beat, right?
Right.
Like, but there's something special about being in the studio with other people. That's like a room that's just built for this purpose. What is that? Because I know when you moved out here, you built the studio was the first thing, right?
Yeah. I think it's community, man. I believe in the idea that we weren't designed to be alone. And I just believe that when you're in a recording studio, 4 walls, it's the most focused, intimate moment that you can share with 2 people, because for the most part, there aren't that many outside influences or distractions that should be happening anyway. Like, you shouldn't bring a lot of the outside distractions into the room, but I do feel that because there's just 4 walls and it's already a creative environment, I think people seem to become a lot more comfortable and a lot more open to sharing ideas or just expressing themselves.
Yeah.
And I feel like the more people or the more opportunities you allow the expression and to like manifest itself, the energy that comes out of it is just like, I mean, it's just endless like opportunities to develop new ideas.
So how is it different? I know you work on, I want to get to this part of all the amazing artists that you're working with. But my understanding is that sometimes you're making beats on your own.
Right. And
then you come in with you send a beat pack to an A&R,
right,
and it gets to the artist, and I imagine sometimes you never even meet each other.
Oh yeah, that happens all the time.
That happens all the time, right?
Yeah.
And that's a very different process than what you're describing of you're sitting in the room creating.
Yeah, that's actually the hardest, for me, that's the hardest process to have to kind of deal with, because me personally, I find that my best work happens, amongst different people, even if it's just someone in the room we're just talking about the game, or I don't know, there's just a certain kind of energy that happens as opposed to when I'm just in a room by myself, Not saying that, I don't create amazing ideas by myself, but I find that there's, I feel like music is never, there's always input and output as it relates to music, right? So I have an idea, I output it, I send it to someone, and it's almost like a circuit that hasn't been connected, because once you send it to you just send it, and then you don't really know how the person's day, you know, what are they into today? Do they have a great day? Do they have a bad day? Like, you just never really understand the space that the receiver's in.
Of course.
You know, so
I mean, that's so interesting. You know, I was talking to a friend recently about the idea of there's a difference. We're talking about A&R and making music and all that, right? And there's a difference between someone who loves music versus loving the way that what music does to people.
right.
And I think, you know, you don't get that until you're in the room with them
100%.
and having that kind of real time. So talk about that. So you've produced for Jay and Kanye, Rhianna, Busta Rhymes, Ashanti. I know there's a big list.
Yeah.
You'll tell us some others, but when were you in the room with those guys, or
So
which ones?
So I was never the Rhianna song that I did, Man Down.
Yeah.
So that was during a writing camp, and Def Jam at the time, they flew in every writer, producer that you could think of. Everyone was either on the plane going, or by the time I got there, they were getting rental cars. Everybody that I met in a day was basically working on this project.
I didn't even know they did that.
Oh man, it was like every studio in LA at the time was working or booked for this Loud album.
Yeah.
And so that situation, it was the first time I was ever in like a writing camp.
Mm-hmm.
But I remember being in the studio and hearing, like, at the time, like, Four on the Floor was like, dance music was huge, and I just felt like that's what everybody was doing.
Sure.
And it was frustrating because I don't naturally do dance music, you know? And so I remember saying to myself, like, what is it that I do well? What do I respond to? And for me, whenever I make music, I always have to envision how it's performed. And so I just asked myself, if I was at a Rhianna concert, what would I want to hear from her? And it was this kind of one-drop reggae influence. And then, luckily I was paired with some writers who Rock City, they come from the Caribbean, so it was the most effortless kind of composition to make.
Nice.
And I had accepted that regardless of whether or not she liked it, it made me feel a way, right? And sometimes, I've learned now to separate when people are requesting my talent and gift or my skill set, right? Sometimes someone wants you to just come in and produce this record and write this kind of song for this artist.
Sure.
And you could kind of figure out the math and say, like, they like this structure, and this structure. But then there are times where it's like, hey, we want you to kind of just paint and create something. Yeah. And that's how that record, in my opinion, got to where it got. And then with Jay and Kanye on Watch the Throne, I had, it was like, hey, Jay-Z and Kanye West is looking for music, right? So it's like, okay, you don't even really know where to start. Like, in all honesty, you just don't know, right? And so I remember I had friends who were making literally 15 beats a day. Yeah. And I felt like, frustration and exhaustion started to just, you can just see it, because they didn't know. It was like they were just shooting with no aim.
Yeah, of course.
But what I did was I just sat down and thought to myself, like, what does that stage look like? Like, these are two pillars in rap music, right? So whatever it is, it has to sound like the biggest stage. Like, it has to look like Woodstock. Like, all I can envision is like 40,000 people, 50,000 people, and then performing like at the O2 Arena or something like that. And so I went and just started listening to a bunch of Queen records. And at the time, Napster was out, and I just told a friend of mine, I was like, yo, like, download every Queen album that you can find.
Wow.
And I just went and started listening to Queen for like 6 weeks. And then one day, I called my friend Dave. I was like, oh, yo, I'm ready to go to the studio to work on this. And I literally went to the studio. I called Verse. I was like, yo, I'm ready. I have an idea. Mind you, at the time, my manager's like, man, you're kind of blowing an opportunity. Why haven't you sent anything? Like, you haven't done anything.
Yeah.
And we went to the studio, and I started working on Who Gon' Stop Me, and it was only like a 8-bar hook, 8-bar intro, 8-bar verse, 8-bar hook. Because at that time, I felt like if they don't like this, then it's pointless for me to...
Yeah, why finish it?
Yeah. And so Verse went in and did the hook, and we sent it, and they loved it. And then I got flown up to New York to work on some other records. So I felt like...
I mean, that's a great song.
Yeah. And you know, the craziest thing is...
And I don't know if I hear the Queen influence, but like, that doesn't matter. Like, that's what got you there.
So in the original, like the actual version that I sent, there was a Queen sample that set up like the aesthetic to me. It gave it this huge grandeur. And like, it just felt like a song that should be performed. Oh, hold on, my bad. I thought I put this on.
That's okay.
It sounded like it should be performed either like first or second. And then when I went on the tour, it was the second song that they performed. And it was so crazy that the vision that I had in my head actually came to fruition, and it was the second song that they performed. Yeah. And then since then, worked on Yeezus. And I just feel like, man, when you're in the room, you're not guessing. You can see the mannerisms, you can see the kind of things that trigger a smile or a frown, or, you know, whenever I'm in the room with an artist, I'm always asking them like, hey, are you still with me? Because I don't have an ego. If you don't like it, I want you to just say, hey, I don't really like it anymore. And if it takes 4 times to get it, then it takes 4 times. I feel like anytime I'm in a recording studio, it's an opportunity to get a better understanding of how to communicate with people. Man, I'm so sorry. I don't know why.
That's all right.
I thought I put it on vibrate. Okay, there we go. But yeah, for me, it's just important to make sure that everyone in the room is on the same frequency. Yeah. I feel like that's the most important thing. Sometimes you get in the studio and you write a song and it's it. Sometimes you might be in there for 4 days and it's not it. But as long as people feel excited about working and creating with me, I feel like the opportunity will always present itself to write the song that connects with everybody. Yeah. You know?
So let's jump back for a second, because you were just dropping out of school. Yeah. And now you're messing with Kanye. Yeah. And so what was the first break?
So after I dropped out of Michigan State, I went to Full Sail to learn the recording studio. Yeah, in Florida. Yeah. I felt like if I want to get an opportunity, then I have to know how to use everything in the studio. And was at Full Sail. I was always looking for local people, but then once you graduate, it's like, okay, now you got to figure it out. What ended up happening was one of my good friends was in a Yahoo chat room. Okay. And someone in the chat room was like, hey, I'm looking for producers to start a record label. And this person was based in Orange County, California. And so he basically was like, yeah, my friend produces. And calls me up and is like, hey, yo, there's this guy in Yahoo chat and he wants to start a label. And at the time...
You're like, what are you doing in the chat room?
It's like, but back then people used to battle in the chat rooms.
Yeah, that's right.
And so he was like, yeah. And I was like, yo, bro, don't send him any of my beats because, you know, at the time, like, producers back then were super precious about everything. It's like, someone's gonna steal my beat and blase. And I was like, yo, don't send them any of my beats. And he's like, okay, cool. But he had already sent him like all the beats, you know? And so then I leave the mall, because we were, a bunch of us were out, and I head back to, Caesar's garage, which was like our makeshift, like, that's the record label. That's where we're starting everything. And he's like, yeah, so I send him your beats, and he likes them, and he wants to hop on the call.
Nice.
And so I'm like, okay. And then this dude named Mike, he calls up. He's like, hey, man, I heard the beats. They sound dope. I want to start a record label. And I'm like, yeah. He was like, no, this is for real. This is as real as the Ferrari in my driveway. And I'm like, bro, man, I'm going to be honest with you. It ain't my Ferrari, so I really don't care.
That's right.
And so he's like, no, I just want to let you know, like, it's a real thing for me. So I'm like, okay, whatever. And, I was working at AT&T at the time, so Monday morning, I'm back at AT&T. And I guess him and C's kept speaking over the weekend. By Tuesday, C's calls me up while I'm at AT&T. He's like, yo, the dude, Mike, we call him MJ now. Yo, MJ he just bought you a keyboard. And it was a Triton keyboard. And it's like, at the time, it's like $3,000. It's what Neptunes use. It's like the holy grail of every producer. I'm like, he did what? He's like, yeah, man. So when you leave work, we're gonna pick up this keyboard. So we go pick up the keyboard, and I'm bugging, because I'm like, yo, I've never met this dude, and he just bought a keyboard.
Right.
And so take the keyboard back to Caesar's, to the makeshift headquarters. And I'm still tripping, and the MJ's like, yo, man, I took a risk. It was like $3,000, but, to me, this is in good faith, because I really want to build a record company. So that was Tuesday.
Yeah.
Right? On Friday, he calls us. He's like, hey, what are you guys doing tomorrow? And we're like, the same thing. I'm making beat CDs, trying to, get local rappers to buy them. He's like, you guys want to come out to LA? And I'm like, yeah, right, sure. And so we hang up, and this is when I knew it was legit, because he was like, he calls back, he's like, yo, I don't even know you guys' real telephone numbers. Like,
Right.
I mean, your real names. I don't know you guys. So we give him, and literally a week later, we had a plane ticket to come out to LA. We met MJ. He rented out a studio to make sure I was the one actually making the beats. And then that was like in December of 2002. And then in January 2003, he had a proposition for me and C's to move out to LA so I can become like a staff writer and producer for his label.
Nice.
And then things just started happening.
Yeah.
And it was like, yo, I was like 19 at the time, and somebody says they want to pay me $3,000 a month to just make beats.
Yeah.
I was like,
Crazy.
What else do you do?
Yeah.
Like, you have to do that.
Of course.
Yeah, so that was the start of it all.
Man, what a crazy story.
Yeah.
Even like the randomness of your boy meeting this guy, but also like, I'm sure you were looking at it sideways.
Of course. Like,
you might have been like, don't call this guy back, like.
Yeah, because it's chat room.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
Yahoo
exactly.
Chat. Like,
yeah, like who knows?
Who knows,
Yeah.
But yeah, no, till this day, and then.
Have you always been like, kind of open like that?
Yeah, man. When I was younger, my grandmother always used to just say to me that, yo, God is everywhere. So you just have to, as long as you just keep an open mind, like, you'll be exactly where you're supposed to be when you're supposed to be there. And so, I try to allow things to flow, but being very aware and make sure I don't get into situations that could be hurtful to me. But at the same time, I just really believe that, sometimes if you allow the flow to happen, it'll happen. As long as you are super diligent and work hard and are committed to whatever it is, things will happen.
Yeah.
Like in high school, in my yearbook, I didn't realize it then what I was saying, but in high school I put that I wanted to be an A&R of a record company. I wanted to have my own production, like my own record label, and to have a wife and 2 kids and a Range Rover. I don't know why the Range Rover specifically, but and a lot of those things started happening. It took a while for them to happen, but a lot of those things are starting to manifest themselves. Like in 2013, I found an artist, developed them, and got them signed to a label. And I didn't, you know, you don't really know that you're doing certain things because you don't know what the title is to it. But I had been doing that since I was in middle school, taking my friends' tapes and telling them, hey, I'm gonna play it on the morning news, and you should now do this and do that. You know, so I was developing artists. I just didn't know that I was doing it at the time. And fast forward to kind of be in a situation where people are always asking me for advice or, you know, bringing records to me. It's like, hey, the record is at like 80%. We needed to get it to, you know, can you finish the song? And just being involved with the process and understanding, you know, the perspective of the creative, but also understanding and knowing like, yo, at the end of the day, there's a business investment or a business interest into this. And so you want to make sure that both parties are happy because, you know, for a long time when you're a creative, all you see is the creative side. Is like, man, they don't like my song, or they want me to change the hook, but the hook is the best part of the song, and blah, blah, blah. And then the commerce side is like, hey, bro, listen, none of that matters if it's not making anybody any money.
Right.
And like understanding that there's a great meeting place where commerce and creativity can coexist. Once you find that sweet spot, you start to allow like really amazing things to happen, right? And just knowing that regardless of where I'm at, never to allow one thing to completely like overshadow the other side of it. And so that's given me the opportunity to really take a look at artists and say like, okay, I hear your concerns. I understand your concerns. This is how we execute that. And me being able to communicate the concerns of like the business world, because if I'm in with an artist, there are two things there are two objectives. One, a label says, hey Shan, we want to put you in the studio because we want you to make a song that we can sell, right? That's the label's objective.
Yeah.
The creative objective is like, artist comes in like, hey, I'm in with this guy that I never met before.
Right.
You know, he could be good, he could not be good, but at the end of the day, I want to make sure that I have the opportunity to say something that matters to me.
Right.
Right. And so understanding and knowing how to communicate their concerns is just as important as making sure that I can communicate to the artist and say like, okay, yo, let's restructure this hook. Let's take this out. Let's take this out without infringing on their ability to be creative. So I try to approach the recording process or the creative process like a learning, like a teaching opportunity, because I do feel that how music is how we consume music has greatly impacted how people make it. And there are all of these steps.
Yeah, it's interesting.
That a lot of these kids, they miss. Just because, not because they don't want to know, it's because the pace at which people make music don't give anyone the opportunity to have like, oh, that's how you do that.
Right.
Oh, this is how you do this. You know, so
it's so interesting you say that too, because you were talking earlier about you feel like we're I forget how you said it, but you feel like we're not meant to be alone.
Correct, yeah.
And yet the way we consume music now, I just think about like now everybody's in their headphones, and when I was a kid, everybody had boom boxes,
Exactly.
right? And it's just, I mean, that's just such a fundamental difference that you pull up at the park or the party or your friend's house or wherever, and everybody's listening together.
Yep.
And now, you know, kids are on the bus and everyone has their own music.
Yeah. And it's so funny, I make music, like, I just remember having to catch the bus to school. And I remember, like, the people who used to pull up in their cars, you know, you would
Bumping.
hear, playing music.
Yeah.
And so I always felt like, because you never know what part of the song is going to catch someone's interest,
Right.
I always look for the, like, the phrasing. I feel like every part of the song should have something in there that if I don't get a chance to hear it again because I hopped on the bus, or if the music's too low, if I'm at the bus stop, if you have certain elements in there, the next time I hear it, I'll remember it. And so that, what you're speaking of, greatly impacts how I hear and look at music and how I see music.
So is there because I've listened to a lot of your stuff, and like you seem to have a lot of, even though you say you don't do dance music, but I've heard elements of that.
Yeah.
Even like, and I think there's a lot of breadth.
Yeah.
Is there a theme or is there a way that you would describe your sound?
Man, so many people have kind of like, that's the yes and no.
Yeah.
I grew up in a house where it's like, the whole world was a musical influence for me.
Yeah.
Right? So there's rap music, but then there's also zouk and compa and salsa and Julio Iglesias, like the Police. Like growing up, my dad used to like just, there's so much music that I was consuming, and what ended up happening was, I kind of look at music from a world perspective, and so because of that, my musical interests, hasn't created a very defined, singular, element, and
So wait, for anybody that doesn't know, including me, put me up on a compa record or.
So a big zouk song would be a record named Zouk Las C'est el Médicament. It's from this group Kassav.
Okay.
Right? And it's like, it's literally, if you go to a West Indian party and you play this song, it's the life of the party.
Okay.
It doesn't matter at what point, if you want to shut it down, you play that.
Okay.
And you could play that song 100 times and people never get tired of it, right?
That's great.
It's a group called Kassav. So a lot of it is like, it's like Afro, a lot of it is just like Afro rhythmic based,
sure.
And with the musical the instrumentation, a lot of it is guitars. And so like these counter rhythms are happening at all different times of the songs.
Yeah.
And so a lot of the music that I make, there are counter melodies that are happening. And when they meet, there's just this really like world kind of moment that happens at that time.
Yeah.
And so I've had friends that, I've started putting out music on my own, and I've had friends say like, yo man, the music, the spectrum is just so broad. Do you find that it hurts you? And I told them, yeah, because I feel like, in music, trends tend to dictate the pulse of music. And because I don't have one singular thing that I do, like these instruments all the time or this rhythm all the time, there's this kind of like gray that happens.
Yeah, but at the same time, I mean, I get it. I get that. But at the same time, when you have the one thing that you do, it's usually over pretty quickly.
Yeah, it's true.
Right, and I think, the great artists that, you know, you mentioned Stevie Wonder, the artists that last decades or the producers that work for decades, they always change their style.
Right.
Because you can't make a record in 2018 the way you did in 1990.
Exact 100%. 100%. I think it's, for me, I've just always been the kind of person to like reverse engineer things. When I listen to music, I try to research and find out how they did it. So at one point, I was trying to figure out how the Wu-Tang albums were made. I just thought that RZA mastered the art of like the 2 and 4 bar loop.
Yeah.
Like he was the original splice guy.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
And so I went and got an ASR because I was like, yo, technology affected the way he made music.
Definitely.
And so I started to understand that he only had, I think like 2 megabytes of sample memory time.
Yeah.
So when he went looking for the magic part in a song, it had to be the magic part. He had to listen to all 3 minutes and 44 seconds of this record in order to get that 2 bar moment and then chop it up and loop it over 8 bars or 16 bars, right? And so...
And even the fidelity, right? Like
yeah.
He's it's a lo-fi
exactly.
production style.
Exactly. And yeah, so...
It's funny, and it's not that you couldn't do that today, but you won't.
Because technology, it's too
right.
easy. It just really, music is made in a way for consumption to happen at like high volumes.
Yeah.
I mean, you just think about, before, we used to think Master P dropping an album every week was crazy, but literally now you can make a song.
Now he's slow.
That's too slow. Like one song every week is, the consumption and the appetite for just content is just reached so high. But what I've found was, for a couple years I kind of struggled with the idea of saying like, yo man, I don't have a signature sound. This is hurting me. This like, how do you compete with all of the producers who have a signature thing? They have that one instrument, they have the bass line, the arrangement is the same. And what a lot of people, where a lot of people would have been like super, I mean, I was frustrated. I can't front and act like I wasn't frustrated.
Sure.
But I felt like the time where a multifaceted producer would be needed again. And, I've done records where I've arranged like, 4-piece horn, and I don't have any classical training, but I just because of all of these musical influences, I understand how to arrange songs and arrange music. And, when a mix isn't the right way, I can tell you like, hey, there's too much 2K here, sweep that. I've had engineer friends, and I can tell them like, this one engineer, I was like, yo, something's changed. Your room sounds cold. He was like, why do you say that? It's because your mix is cold. It's too brittle here. And he was like, man, I just moved to a new studio, and we don't have any panels in the windows. And so his mixes started to reflect the new environment that he was in.
Crazy.
So for me, I feel like there's gonna come a time where all of my skill sets and interests and abilities will have the opportunity to be exploited, and I'd be able to basically assist and help people in helping achieve what it is that they're trying to accomplish.
Amazing. So you're talking about your personality and a little bit of some of the inner struggles. Is there one aspect of your personality that holds you back?
Overthinking. That kills me. That is the bane of my. Like, it really is it's overthinking. I think what I love about a lot of the kids today, well, one of the things that I think it makes a lot of these kids so bold, right, is the fact that they're impulsive. I think
Yeah.
In certain areas, that could be a bad thing.
Sure.
But when we're talking about seizing the moment and seizing the opportunity, I'm too much in my head. That's where the reverse engineering way of looking at things hurts me. I have started to get to a space where I'm not thinking about it. That's why, now I do feel a lot more, I'm having a lot more fun with music again because it's not so cerebral anymore. I think when you're starting out and someone tells you like, hey, we just want you to make beats, everything is cool. And the moment, you're Grammy nominated and A&Rs are putting you in this really big studio and there's this expectation that happens.
Yeah.
And I think the moment you start allowing the creative part to take a back seat to the expectations, that's when everything starts to get messed up.
Yeah.
And so for me, overthinking has always been something that I struggled with, but I'm starting to get better at it. Just looking at my son, everything is just it's just instinctive for him. Like, hey, I'm gonna do this because I want to do it. And so he's taught me a lot about just doing it. Like, yo, just do it. And I feel like now we're in a time where the people who do more get the opportunity to develop skills or develop identities or just go through a period of development.
Sure.
Before we had like time where it's like, oh, you work on this for this time and work on this for this time. But now in anything, in sports, like if you don't come out and if you're not like rookie of the year, they're drafting somebody at the same position the next year.
Yeah.
And so, socially, I feel like the appetite for more, faster, causes people to kind of like you have to be able to just like, hey, do you want to do X, Y, Z? Do it, And so I'm learning to say, okay, learn how to gather information, process it, and then be able to arrive at a decision and you move on the decision. You know what I mean? And so that's kind of like,
that's big.
Yeah.
So I know you're busy as a producer. You were telling me earlier about starting to develop artists.
Yeah.
I know you're doing your own project. Is there a big goal that you're shooting for?
Yeah. Yeah, the goals.
Okay.
For me, getting to a point where I can be like responsible for helping the visions and ideas of artists and creative people develop ideas that's like the head of the, titles are so like, you don't know what those titles, there are titles for everything.
Sure.
Before, I used to think that if you're a record producer, you're not an A&R. If you're an A&R, then you can't become like a chairman. But I'm starting to understand like, the titles don't define how you operate within those environments.
Absolutely.
So, right now, the goal is for me, to find and develop 3 to 5 artists and help them improve on their situations, and then be able to have that be kind of like my resume of what I know how to do. But I guess the end goal, if like there's a title, is to at some point be, the head of development A&R for a record company. That's the end game, whether it be for myself or if it's for consulting or it's in whatever capacity. I do feel like we're in a space now where technology can't be excluded from the music conversation.
Sure.
And I do feel like we're moving to a space where companies that didn't start out in the music space are going to be looking for people who know how to communicate, music to the business and corporate people, but then also be able to make artists and creative people feel comfortable about the marriage and the union that's happening.
Right.
So
Yeah.
If I was to say like that's the end game. That's the end game. Just create a house or an environment where whether you paint or if you're a songwriter or a producer or just an artist or whatever it is, I feel like creating the environment where people who have great ideas can be in a space where they can help cultivate and develop those ideas. That's what I want to be a part of,
Nice.
whether it's music or whatever the expression is.
Yeah.
That's the end game.
Nice. So who are some of the artists you're working with now that we should be paying attention to?
So right now there's this kid I just met on Instagram. His name is Love Man Sui, and he's like really, really dope. And then who else? There's a couple of other people that I found out who are signed that I didn't get a chance to be a part of. Yeah. But there's this kid Cautious Clay that I think is just amazing. Let's
cool
see
name.
what else. Yeah. Who else am I? And then there's this girl that I just met through. Well, I haven't met her yet, but this songwriter John, he just brought her attention to me. Her name is Sydney. I forget her last name, but there's like some really cool ideas that I think we're gonna be able to do together. And what else? Skips my mind. That's just what I can recall right now. Those are the two that I'm super excited about, and I'm working on like putting out a French project. Which is, I don't want to call it a project, just met a couple like French artists, and I have some music that I feel like will be dope, and we're just gonna put them out together.
Yeah.
That's pretty much it, though.
And then I know you're working on your own stuff.
Yeah.
So how is that? How do you approach that differently?
I'm learning that you have to approach it from it's just pure expression. Like I have one song that I did 2 years ago with this Australian artist named Ben Abraham, and it's like a 7-minute song, but they're just different music points and expressions going. It's just a very free-flowing kind of song. Yeah. And then but some of the new stuff I'm like experimenting with like different electronic kind of progressive things. Like I'm a fan of like Brodinsky and like Ilangelo is really dope, and Gesaffelstein, and like all of these just super electronic and like it's almost destructive things. And so just experimenting, just like painting. Essentially, that's what I call it, just painting. So there's no...
Nice.
It's given me the opportunity to... That's where, like, just do it. Try it. There's no wrong to it. Just make it.
Yeah.
And, those are things.
Sometimes it's hard, I think, to give ourselves permission.
Man, I had to learn how to do that.
Yeah.
I just thought there was just...
We all do.
Box. It's like, nope, you got to do it like this. It needs to be like this. But looking at my son, like, he doesn't even understand the idea of having to do things one specific way, because he's trying to figure it out now.
I mean, it's so funny you say that, and I know your son's 4, so it's first of all, it's such a great opportunity to be able to learn from a 4-year-old, right?
Absolutely.
But I always say that, there's a value to not knowing the rules sometimes, right? Or to being, to being naive. Sometimes I always say, like, if I'd known how hard it was going to be, I never would have tried.
It's true. That is 100% true.
So sometimes, just do it.
And you figure, there's no wrong. How I look at everything as an opportunity to give to someone else anyway.
Yeah.
So, I'm not going to say, like, my story through the music business has been peachy. you know, there are just definitely some like, man, that would never happen to me again. But
Sure.
I take that and I use that as an opportunity to teach people that I might meet. Be like, hey man, we're in 2018. You might want to do your deals like this.
That's right.
Hey, you know, you don't have to focus on just that. You know, maybe try this, maybe try that. And so I just feel like with all the experience that I have within the world of music and business and how it works together and just life, like just life things, being able to share that with people has, you know, given me the opportunity to still be connected with new things and just have the opportunity just to influence it from the inside out, which was something that when I sat with Aton, he said, he was like, you know, a lot of you know, record producers and songwriters, they never start thinking about being on the other side of you know, the music business. And it's like, you know, if you're the kind of person who knows how to nurture people and develop things and you're a great communicator, if you just stay on this side of the music business, you don't give it the opportunity to grow, and it's hard for you to add value to it in just a different way.
That's right.
And once he said that, man, it just helped confirm a lot of the ideas and the evolution that I was kind of, you know, it was like, it was a struggle, because it's like, man, like, no, I'm a record guy, like I make songs, like I have to be in the studio, and it's like, yeah, or you could still help people make songs.
Sure.
And then help facilitate and give them the tools and resources to help do the same thing without you having to necessarily have to be in the studio. So
yeah, and I think that just depends on what you're in it for, right?
Yeah.
Like, for some people, being in the studio is the thing.
Yeah.
Right? So then you just do that.
Yeah.
Some people, you know, but if you want to have a bigger impact, you empower other people and help them and guide them and, you know, allow them to learn from your experiences.
Exactly.
Okay, I got to get to a lightning round before they kick us out of here.
Okay.
Tell me one decision that changed your life forever.
One decision that changed my life forever, moving to California. Just, stranger says he has a record company on Yahoo, and I get up and tell my mom, hey, I'm moving to LA.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
Okay, complete this sentence. I don't have talent, I have blank.
I have gift.
So if I worked for you, if I was on your team, what's something I would hear you say over and over?
Something that you, how can I help you get to what you want to do? How can I help?
Yeah. You know, it's funny, a guy that I had on the show called me this week to tell me he hated the answer he gave to that question. It was like 2 months ago. Not that it was bad, but he was like it was true. He gave me a true answer, and he's like, oh, I hate that I say that. Anyway, but yours is good. Who would you be most excited to learn as a fan of your work?
Man, that I'd be most excited as a fan? I'm gonna be honest with you, it happened to me. Jerry Wonder. Jerry Wonder randomly calls me up at 2 o'clock in the morning and says, hey, it's Jerry Wonder, and I hang up on him because I didn't believe it was really Jerry Wonder. But Jerry Wonder.
Okay.
He was like, it was the Fugees. It was like, you know, I saw Wyclef on stage, I saw Lauren or Praz, but I seen this guy, like, who's the guy at the bass? Because growing up in Haitian bands and stuff, the bass player is the coolest guy.
Is that right?
Yeah, he's the coolest guy. He's the coolest.
Yeah.
And I was like, yo, who's the bass player? And then I started piecing it all together, like Jerry Duplessis is the bass player. And Jerry Wonder calls me up at 2 o'clock in the morning and was like, I like your music.
Wow.
No joke, I cried.
That's so cool.
For me, that was the moment that I felt like, whoa.
Yeah.
Things have really come full circle.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah.
What's your favorite city to travel to?
Favorite city to travel to? Man, that's tough. Probably Paris. It's just, man, it's just.
I love Paris.
Yeah, it's.
But you speak French.
Yeah, I speak a little French.
It's better
Creole,
for
yeah.
you than for me.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
No, I love Paris.
Yeah.
What is the last great book you read?
The last great book that I read. Man, I've been reading a lot, so that's actually a hard one.
What are you reading now?
Right now, I'm reading "You're a Badass."
I don't know that.
Yeah. Before that, I was reading the Manifestation Manifesto.
Oh, okay.
That was a really good one. And then,
That sounds deep.
yeah, man, it just, again, it's just like, it's this idea of like, hey man, do things with good intentions.
Yeah.
Like, just wake up and have really good intentions, and everything that you dream about, go for them, and it'll happen. Like it'll happen.
Yeah, that's good. Okay, what movie do you think you've seen the most throughout your life?
What movie that I've seen the most? Probably Coming to America.
I love that. That movie, I watch it with my son. Now, you're almost to that age.
Yeah.
We started, I think, around 5. We do a movie night, and I pick the movie. So it's not gonna be like kids, but it'll be, appropriate.
Yeah, appropriate.
Whatever. But that movie is so deep. There's so many levels
layers,
of that movie.
Yeah,
it's incredible.
My parents are immigrants, so it was like
Yeah.
that. Just so many different. It just speaks to every point of like the story of trying to make it and trying to get what you really want.
Yeah.
In spite of how you look,
But it's also like a classic. It's like a fairy tale story.
It is 100%.
Prince, and you know what I mean, but completely, you wouldn't recognize that.
No, 100%.
In fact, I didn't even realize that until right now, just hearing you talk about it. That's such a great movie. And the barbershop is it's incredible. Who's your favorite DJ?
My favorite DJ. I don't have one. Well, I mean, they're all producers to me.
Okay.
I think Dr. Dre, he was a DJ.
Yeah.
Like Swiss, Timbo, like they're DJs. So.
Anybody you've seen live that was memorable?
Actually, you know what? Super Dupes from Black China.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Growing up, Black China, they're like a dance hall sound, like they're a sound system.
Okay.
And you go to their parties when we were younger, and it's like for an hour and a half, you're just not stopping. And he DJ'd at my wedding.
Oh, nice.
And everyone was like, bro, your wedding was legendary. You had Black China, and he played the illest set.
That's crazy.
For the longest period of time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's crazy. I mean, that's, those experiences are just so amazing.
Yeah, those are that's what, man, the memories in those experiences are the colors in life, man.
Yeah.
They just, you just take them, and regardless of where you're at in life, you can dial back and be like, man, yo, I remember when that happened. So you just try to
absolutely
give yourself the opportunity to have as many fun memories and cool memories to counter all of the memories that give us character, I'll say.
That's a great way. Man, thanks for doing this. This is so much fun talking to you.
Appreciate it, man.
Yeah, same here.
Yeah, whenever, if you're doing another
come back anytime, for
Absolutely.
Sure. And definitely when you want to promote stuff, come through.
Appreciate it.
Yes, that was Sak Pase on Rebel Radio. I hope you enjoyed it. I know I did. Make sure you leave us a review on iTunes. Hit us on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube. Everything is at Rebel Radio. And most importantly, come back next week for more Rebel Radio. Peace.